9 handicap, looking to stop the two-way miss with the driver, and with that path being inside, it will either block to the right or hook to the left based on club face control. We will, however, start with your wedge swing here and do a brief analysis on your setup and swing. Although stated in the comments that there's not much directional issues with these short clubs, I tend to agree. Things look pretty good from the start with the bend from the waist and knee flex. Arms and hands are hanging straight down. Just the toe of the club's lifted up off the ground slightly, which might have you standing back a little further away than you need to be, at least for this short wedge. But let's get our primary path line up and play it through one time. Club path and the takeaway looks awesome, riding right above your path line with the face in a nice position. Hand path, however, does look like it's extending a little bit too far away from your body. So I like seeing the club and hands cover through this same position. As we move a little further past, you can see what I'm talking about, where the hands are here and the club is inside or shallow of the hands. So try to work that hand path more in, and don't feel like you have to work the club path more in as well. A great drill, I know I'm rambling on this, but a great drill to work that feeling is to set up right here, hinge that club straight up so it's vertical or horizontal to the ground, and then begin your takeaway as normal, trying to get that club path and hand path more inside. So by hinging your wrist straight up like this, that club will tend to stay more outside of the path while your hand path can work more in or on plane. So if you can take hold of that, good luck. It's a great drill. It's a Ryan Moore flex and extending of the wrist exercise. But let's breeze past that and continue looking at the wedge. So it stays a little bit shallow and laid off to the top. Could be your distance from the ball, could just be what you do across the board, but ultimately it looks like a nice top position. Left arm nice and parallel, left wrist hooks flat, clubs right in line. Things get maybe a little long for a wedge. I mean, it looked like a degreed wedge, which means you shouldn't really be taking full swings at it anyway. And that extra hinge, just as that club settles up here to the top, you can see a slight opening of that wrist and you might lose your club face angle just a bit by going too long. You do recover with a great example of what I was trying to say before, where the club head, club face, covers or passes through the hands here. It's quite alright to see that exact angle on the downswing, as that looks like a zeroed out path, not into out or out to in, whereas the primary path line can be more of an in to out influence or bias. But getting that club head to cut right through the hands is the same thing I want to see in the backswing, although just a little bit more inside. So all in all, pretty good things to see with this wedge. Last thing I want to point out is your trail elbow connection and right wrist maintenance at impact. Very tight to the body. Right heel has not lifted up a ton. Instead, it's pushed you laterally forward and opened up the hips. So great hand path, great arm connection as you are swinging this wedge rather nicely. If we go back to your driver swing, we can see the setup does change a little bit, where you're slightly more out on your toes and the general bend angle looks like it's fallen forward just a bit. That gives you no more space for those hands and will reach you out further away. And again, the theme of standing pretty far from the ball continues. I can see why you do that though, with the marking of the center of the ball, or the ball right in the center of the face. The impact location with this driver does look like a Healy strike, and that's going to start the ball and be one of your two misses out to the right. Even though I don't want you to hit the heel as your way to hit your block miss, if you're going to hit a two-way miss to try to get it down to one-way miss, the block is the preferred way to do it. So it is keeping that path from the inside and holding the face open, ideally not just hitting it on the heel. So the things that I would recommend you do with this driver to take your first step is to stand back a little bit, get that spine a little more upright so you don't feel like you're leaning over on your toes. With the path line, let's watch that takeaway. Pretty decent. Club right along that line. Same thing where the hands are shallowing out the club ever so slightly. But good rotations to the top. Arm again, when you're at about 80% of your backswing, you're in a great spot. The crossing of the line continues the theme and does get your hands a little more vertical and club face slightly more open than it was just seconds ago. The transition, however, does sit to your front side and then really shallow that club as your hand path is going away from your body to keep the club inside. Now let's clean everything up and play this through again. As you are transitioning down, this club is shallowing, which is going more inside. As the club does that, it tends to open up the face and keep it working in to out. Much more of a push or block bias, which is kind of what we want to do if we're going to stop the hook. But what can happen with this is if you release the club any earlier than you should, that face will get closed down and look like what you saw on the screen as the last shot. Ball might start straight or even a little right and then really hook over. That is simply because you're well to the inside of the path and your face would just be well too far closed because you've flipped it. Now, your solution here would be to probably in the long run get a little less from the inside with your path on the way down, because that will give you a wider opportunity to square the face without as drastic of deviation in either direction. So back here, finally, in English, what you should do is not change too much of your top of the backswing for now, aside from your hand path, but try to keep a little bit more connection of that trail foot to the ground so you don't drive the right knee in and drive your hand path so far away from your body, striking it on the heel. Just start by hitting it more in the center of the face and then trying to determine what your two-way miss would be. It could just turn into a one-way miss with a draw if you stop hitting it on the heel. And if you're fine with that, great job. You had really one thing to fix, your hand path. But if there's anything else, it's likely due to just timing up with your hands and your grip. So another follow-up video with the face on view would give a lot of information. I will leave you with one tour comparison here of someone not maybe to exactly model after, but really to point out a couple of the things that I wanted to get across with you here, which one with our path line, not really talking about the shape, but the club works right alongside the path. The face is more open to play a fade, but more speaking on the length of backswing and transition, where the hands barely get above the shoulders at the top before the lower body starts to clear and transition like yours does. However, at about this point, you're holding the lag in a similar fashion, but your right foot has already lifted off the ground. This connection with the ground and the trail foot is going to allow Tony to keep his trail elbow more connected to the body and synchronize the turns while staying connected on the way through. That's what keeps the hand path closer to the body and not reaching so far away to hit it on the heel. Eventually that toe will lift up off the ground when the hips pull the body through, but it's not a lot of jumping or early extending through the spine. Instead, that back foot is really just used to push the weight laterally and then twist the hips open. So I hope you can take away a couple things from here. Again, further clarification, trail elbow tightness, and working your hand path in the downswing. Hitting more blocks and pushes by continued rotation. Don't let those hands flip it over and hit that hook. Good luck. SendASwing.com.